Hi there, and welcome to this session. And my name is Nick Price. I'm the moderator for this session, and I'm based here in Edinburgh, in Scotland, where the sun isn't shining, unfortunately, but I presume it's shining on our three amazing speakers that we have here today. I'm the CEO of a technology recruiting company that sends people around the world called Bright Purple Resourcing, hence the purple. And I'm also a founding director of a RegTech continuous improvement company called Primed, based out of Manchester in England. And today we're talking about has the crisis helped companies shift from being product-centric to customer-centric, and are they ready for the consumer of 2021? On the call today, as I said already, we've got three amazing speakers, and based in three different countries around the world. The first speaker I'd like to introduce is Anastasija Oleinika, and she's the CEO of TWINO Group, so based in Riga. Anastasija,
yes.
You want to introduce yourself?
Hello there. Thank you very much. So TWINO is a fintech company, and what we do is actually we connect two different universes. We run a peer-to-peer investment platform where on one side we have investors investing their funds at premium returns above approximately 10% per annum. And on the other side, we have borrowers who are borrowing from the funds supplied by the investors. At the moment, we operate in 5 countries, the biggest of our markets being Russia and Poland. And recently, we also entered the Asia-Pacific region. Actually, TWINO has been founded more than 10 years ago. And over this time, we have managed to issue more than 1 billion euro in loans, and almost 700 million of that 1 billion was funded through our peer-to-peer platform. A bit about me. So I'm the CEO of TWINO Group, and I have a strong background in finance. Previously, I was CFO and COO for some period at the same time, where I had to dig very deep into business processes and fine-tuning the products. But now, since I've taken the CEO role, more of my responsibility goes towards formulating strategy and leading and motivating my team. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. In Ireland, we've got Peter Oakes, Board Director of Transfermate Global Payments, founder of Fintech Ireland, and not from Ireland by that accent, I hear. So, Peter, say hello.
Good morning, Nick. How are you? Yes, greetings from Ireland. My accent does hail from Australia. I married an Irish woman, so for my sins, I now live in Dublin. But I travel quite extensively for business across Europe and the US, and often back to Australia. And you've mentioned the businesses that I'm on the board of, and they cut across areas such as global payments, options, market making on European exchanges, and also the issuance of electronic money. So COVID had a big impact on all of our businesses. Some have been very resilient. Others have had a bit of a hiccup in this area. But I'm also a former central banker here in Europe and a regulator in Ireland, the UK, Australia, and actually a small stint in Saudi. So I sort of look at the fintech spectrum really through that intersection of governance, risk and compliance, as well as the new technologies that are coming on board. Thank you very much for the kind introduction.
I'm just wondering, do you have any time to golf over there, considering you've got such a full-time job? But anyway, moving on to Lithuania and to Vilnius and to Agnė Selemonaitė, Deputy CEO and Board Member for ConnectPay in Vilnius. Hey, Agnė.
Hi, Nick. Hi, everyone. Labas. It sounds a bit like Eurovision contest as a presentation as well. So hello, everyone. I'm Agnė Selemonaitė, and I run the company that is called the ConnectPay as a deputy CEO and a board member. We work with the digital online companies, and we provide the online banking services for high-risk businesses, and we work mainly with financial institutions, with gambling and gaming companies all around the world. We also what we do is basically we provide payments, so we are not providing credits or any payment, like lending services, but we focus on the really client-centric products that is used for everyday banking services. We also are the second fastest growing company in Lithuania in terms of a payments institution. So we experienced the seven times growth last year in terms of revenue, and the COVID situation hasn't affected that as well. So we look at the way we look at the products and the clients in those terms.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the introductions. And yeah, as you say, Agnė, it sounds a bit like a Eurovision Song Contest. Actually, Britain's got no chance of winning it, by the way. So okay. So the first question I've got for you is, I suppose the question that we asked, is it actually the right question? So one answer could be the products have always been customer focused, but the pandemic has forced all organizations to reassess their customer needs to move forward. Peter, do you have a view on this?
Yeah, look, I think it is the right question because, Nick, it's allowed us to have the discussion, right? And I think most of us seem to be in violent agreement that the product should always have been customer focused. A few years ago, I was involved in setting up, I think, Lithuania's second specialized Fintech bank called European Merchant Bank. And at the heart of that, when we looked at the strategy, was all around the market forces that, what did the clients actually want, notwithstanding the products that we could deliver. And I'm not involved with that business any longer, but I was talking to the chairman just recently, and we were talking about COVID, and look, the same point that he raised has come across all the boards that I'm involved in as well. And that is, firstly, we've seen so much innovation in the last couple of months because of COVID. We've really gone on a trajectory which has just gone like this. Things that we thought would take 2 years to happen have been happening now in 2 months. But the one lesson we've learned is that we need to have some controls around that product growth and what we're distributing to customers, because not everything has been working. And we can go off and create these amazing products, but if they're not customer focused, like the best electric car in the world, if it's not set up for driverability and usability, then who's going to buy the product? And then as a director or a CEO, as our colleagues are on this panel of those sort of businesses, you're sort of left in a very difficult position. Yet COVID probably has really given us that impetus to sort of stop and say, right, let's listen more to the customers. What is it that they want? And how are we currently delivering that? And I've seen a lot of pivots in business. And I mean, obviously, COVID's been great for some businesses, and other businesses has been hiccups. We've actually just even seen upticks in business because of COVID. Anybody involved in payments probably saw massive volatility in the first couple of weeks of COVID as well, and then began to respond to see, oh, actually, were our products creeping under that volatility? And we weren't ready for that. So I'll stop there because I think some of our colleagues will probably may want to chime in there. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I can see Agnė nodding her head there under that ConnectPay sign. So good advertising, by the way, Agnė. So Agnė, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I would really like to compliment the Peter's what Peter noted on the reactions and how consumers were behaving and the increase on online payments. So it's been going up by 30% in our case as well. Obviously, we've been working with online businesses all the time, so we didn't expect that it's going to change significantly. But then, since we were very reactive and created a new merchant product that is worked really well for us, and we were hoping to address more and more of usual businesses who worked landline and now are moving online or increasing their capacities through the product as well. But also the other thing, what we played and responded, I think, really fast to the needs of the consumers and the way we created the products is the app launch for authentication and stronger identification of our clients as well, because that allowed us to increase to address the security issues that I think were raised in a lot of platforms during the COVID as well, and in terms of the security of the banking services and things. So I think in our case we were really reactive and being focused on what our businesses and our client businesses needs as well.
Thanks very much. Okay, let's move on. Anastasia, you've been very quiet there, so it's your chance to say hello now. So a question for you. Do business models need to also change and not just the products for Consumer 2021?
Yes, for sure. So I can address this question actually from TWINO's perspective first, because even though we built our business as purely online, starting from 2008, COVID really affected our operations, and it affected them in two ways. So the first part was that actually with stock market reaction, what we saw was that our investors were also becoming more conservative and more cautious. So as a result, we saw that there was no point at that time to revise the product. What we revised additionally to address our investors' needs was the process in which we communicate with our customer, in this case investor. So we noticed that more frequent, tailor-made and upfront rather than reactive communication was of huge importance. And another point that we realized is that also the exit experience for some customers or investors that wanted to leave our investment platform was very, very important. And we provided that experience, kind of making it our first priority during crisis time. And what we see as a result now, when the markets have stabilized, that out of approximately 10% of the total investor pool that left us during March and beginning of April, now almost 50% are returning. And I attribute to that we actually revised our process to be more customer-centric in reaction to COVID.
Okay. Peter, Agnė, one of you, have you got a comment on that?
Look, I'd echo everything was just said. What was interesting, Etsy, which is a sort of e-commerce marketplace, right? Its share price went up by double at the start of the crisis. And the reason it did was because of people working from home, making home face masks. So obviously anyone doing payments processing for Etsy also received quite a good uptick there as well. But look, other things I would just note is that probably there's been a couple of failures in this area, and I don't mean in terms of firms failing. I mean that although we've moved quickly to new products and we have quickly innovated, still lots of friction around the onboarding process. And I know we're not talking about anti-money laundering and all the rest on our panel. That there's another great panel for the attendees to listen to. But that friction became quite a problem, and when communication wasn't forthcoming from some of the apps, e-money apps and payment apps, it did cause a bit of conservatism. And what I mean by that was a flight back to the banks, because people were thinking, well, my money's going to be safe in a bank account because it's protected by a European financial guarantee. Yet with fintechs, I'm protected by a 2% ring fencing safeguarding model or segregation of funds. Now, I think we've got through that, which I think is really important. I think the other thing too is what we're seeing is in a number of countries, after the last financial crisis, government stepped in and they provided low-cost loans, but they did to small to medium-sized enterprises, but they did that through the banks. This crisis now, a number of governments are utilising crowdfunding platforms and alternative lenders to be distributors of those loans. So that's then driven new products as well. It has also allowed those SMEs to receive that money and then also obviously pay their staff and keep driving their business forward and keep the real economy moving. So I guess what I'm saying is that a lot of this isn't just about all these fancy valuations that people talk about and these amazing new products. It is actually rubber hitting the road, and fintech is helping the economy grow and, well, at least continue and be resilient. I'll use the word grow maybe next quarter or the quarter after.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Another bold statement from. Yeah,
I might just comment on Peter's note on the KYC and ML onboarding processes as well, because that's been always, since we've worked with high-risk companies, and that's like a long process, from 2 weeks to sometimes 6 months that the companies are being onboarded on our side, just to make sure that, they are all fully compliant with all the rules that we apply and implement them. But I think the organization of what COVID has worked really well for us, and what we noted as a sort of a learning curve that when we moved to work online, like everyone is more focused, and what suddenly everyone had, the communications became very well organized, also with the clients and internally for us as well. So as a company, I think we started to become more structured, and that helped us, our clients as well. So when we look on the onboarding processes, the productivity was like raised by 20-30% on that side as well. So all the world to be shut for a long time, but I think that influenced a lot to our team, to be more focused and work with the clients more intensively as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. Is this the end of bricks and mortar? We're talking about Consumer 2021. Is the complete digitization of certain industries now inevitable? Anastasija?
Well, we need to bear in mind that there is still some huge gap compared to what we are seeing within the fintech industry, especially in Europe and in the Silicon Valley, where most of us were kind of very prepared for this crisis that we are seeing at the moment. There are still countries and markets that are not really ready to be digitalized. So digitalization of some industries will certainly happen in the future, but the question is how soon and in what way. What I can mention as an example is that we saw some developing countries, for example, in Asia or in Southern Africa, kind of joining the digital services in a much different way and following a different path than, for example, Europe did. So in Europe, it was first web, and then, user experience in the web, and only then we started thinking, okay, like how do we sell more? Maybe we should create apps. While in those markets where customers were never used to, being digital, sitting in front of the laptop as we are all doing now. Mobile is actually the path through which they get access to digital services. So I think that is something to be taken into account by any company or a player or industry that expects this transformation to digital in the countries that are still developing. Yeah, it's very likely that the web is going to be skipped and that the mobile is going to be the way to actually deliver the services.
So update your mobile phone as quick as you can then, basically, by the sounds of that. Agnė, do you have a comment on that? Obviously, as you said, you're an online business, so do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, we haven't noticed, because obviously we've been working with online businesses all the time, so we haven't made seen a significant change between what they did before and what they do now. But obviously, when looking around, we see a lot of, when we talk within the industry, we see there's a lot of things happening with other payment peers that we are in contact with, especially in Lithuania, because of the infrastructure that we have. And I think for the Lithuania-based companies, even if they're working internationally or locally, it's way easier to move online because we have a perfect infrastructure for that as well, and the whole sort of government focus and the Bank of Lithuania focus on increasing the capacity of all the financial services that we can provide as well.
Peter, you're obviously humming, so you yes.
Yeah, Agnė and Anastasija make some great points. I mean, I think on the one end of the spectrum, okay, buying a house and getting a mortgage is still going to be very much a personal face-to-face business unless you already have the mortgage in place and you're refinancing. And a lot of that comes down to the simple fact about the witnessing of documentation, right? And it has to be in front of a human being. And there are some countries trying to have a look at that. And this all leads us into that discussion around what the European Commission is desiring in all its directives, is for this idea of it, all regulations and directives being technology neutral, so that they will legislate for the activity, but they will not be telling us how we can and cannot do the business and the way we choose to do it in the sense of the platforms we use. So that's going to help that sort of convergence between or blending between the face-to-face type business and also the digital experience. But what's useful, I think, to understand is that despite all the great progress we've been making, and Lithuania is a shining example, it's now an international fintech hub, has a great regulatory sandbox. The Bank of Lithuania has the LB chain. They did a great firms outside of on the continent. But the European Central Bank actually said that in terms of payments in Europe, that 75% of payments in Europe are still done in cash. And they made that statement when they were talking about COVID resistance of the banknote. So I thought that was really interesting. So what you're going to, I guess my point here is that a small increase in payment transactions being done in a digital format is going to look really big because it's a big jump in percentage points. But a decrease in cash in the statistics is not going to look so big. So we need to bear that in mind. But also, notwithstanding that, we've got we talked about digitization in terms of certain countries, and particularly with low to middle income countries. The World Bank said that money remittance being sent to low to medium income countries, it's predicted to fall by 20% to 440 odd billion US dollars this year. And a lot of that money is still transferred through traditional banking systems, and when it is transferred that way, at least 12% of the value chain is lost. If we can digitize that more and maybe use other rails in the existing payment railway network, again, what fintech can actually do here in helping digitization is we can put more food on the table of poorer families in those low-income countries because less money is being lost from the value chain. If you get my point, so. I think they're really important things for us to focus on. But even in well-off economies, it's interesting to see that in the Reserve Bank of Australia statistics for April, but we probably all expect this, is the massive drop-off actually in payment transactions, full stop, whether it's done by cards or not. But the UK did receive quite a big increase in the amount of contactless payments happening last year. So I guess we're on this continuing journey, and I think that it goes back to that point that we'll probably get to the endpoint faster now than we would have thought we would get to maybe 3 to 4 months ago.
Okay. May I jump in on this one?
Please,
I think there is an important distinction to make. So we're talking about like the customer of the future. Customers are two kinds in this situation. Yeah. So there is, the B2B, so the business customer and the consumer. Right. So if you speak about business as a customer, I think a lot of businesses will look and operate different after COVID. And then there is the end consumer. And there, of course, other considerations in addition to, just being safe and not going out of your house, doing something quicker and more efficiently come into play. So there's always this social factor that, I get out of my house, I meet some people, I get social interaction. And that's another benefit that's hard to measure in comparison to all of those efficiency measures by just doing business digitally. And now I think the key point where we will see whether the consumer trends that we've seen changing during COVID will stay or will pass is actually on the shoulders of the businesses. So whether the businesses who got now this new business direction by providing services to wider audience digitally, whether they will be able after this initial onboarding to keep the end customer. So that's something also that businesses should be focusing on. And not just, take this as a new normal that everybody is going to be online going forward, because people will get back to their old behavior patterns. That's likely.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I will add that from my personal perspective as well, or experience. Whether people will come back to their old habits, I don't know, because I've been living in China for a while, and that was 2 years ago. And the way the whole society worked over there wasn't cash involved anyway. If you go to the market or anywhere where old people were just using their phones, to pay for things, so it seemed like a very, the impression I I had of the old Chinese population were completely reverted back because they were fully digitalized and everything. For example, I was raising a baby then and I was staying at home for a long time. I didn't have any, it was like a COVID situation for me over there. So I didn't have any problems of ordering and doing anything online just because all the infrastructure is over there. So I think there's really a lot to learn and to take out from China from that part. And I think it's coming in Europe in the sense the way we do business and live our lives in here as well.
Yeah, I suppose. Please, Peter, sorry.
No, I think that point about China is excellent, and it really feeds into the previous point. I mean, it's amazing when you go to China that you just live on WeChat. You don't even go to the wider internet. From the moment you wake up, and it wakes you up, it's monitored your sleep patterns through the night. You book your taxi through the app. You book your restaurant through the app. They've created this captivated audience, and I think that the point was made earlier. I think it was by sorry, may have got it wrong. Was it Agnė? I think made it. It's like we're not talking about the web now. We're talking about something different. So China is an amazing example. I guess Lithuania seems to be quite a large, is a jurisdiction which seems to be receiving a lot of attention from China as well at the moment in terms of investment in financial technology. So more power to you.
Yeah. And Peter, sleep patterns. I mean, what the hell are sleep patterns? I mean, I haven't had a sleep pattern since the start of March. So anyway, I've got no patterns in my sleep just now. But actually, coming off the back of that, the comment that was running there, I suppose one of the key questions to answer might be social inclusion. And you've talked there about China with WeChat and obviously Agne's own experience living out there. But there are going to be customers who are not digitally enabled, and there is going to be a load of people out there who aren't savvy in this world, maybe aren't even comfortable in this world. So how do we address that? How do we, if we're going to move all this stuff up there, how do we address it? These pockets of people that can't play, basically.
I think Google, if I'm not mistaken, had a really good initiative of educating elder people to use technology in a way so I think it's about the education, and I think the market of the elder population is a very untouched one in Europe, especially. So it's a go-to market if you're a consumer, like B2C service provider, then something that you can really teach and include them within the technology and digitalization as well.
Yeah, actually, I think that that's that's one of the points for a company who wants to actually get access to that certain audience of potential customers. It's just going to be an important point to make, to educate the future customer. To add that to their usual customer process. And it's relevant both for businesses and also for the governments, because, for example, we saw in Latvia that even though we claim that we successfully switched to online education, when COVID started. But what I see from experience all around is that actually either both the teachers and the kids didn't have enough digital skills and background. So what I believe is that there is going to be big investment happening into educating those kind of parts of the society, and then those who will be unwilling, they will have an opportunity to learn, but those who will be unwilling to learn, unfortunately, will be paying higher price for an offline service.
Yeah, Peter?
Yeah, well, listen, I won't take offence at Agne's comments because I'm on the wrong side of 50, so I now get lumped in the elderly bracket, and I'm forced to watch all these over 50 ads, and my children make fun of me. But I also realise, as they do, I'll be working until I turn 80 because that's just the way the world works. But I think it actually raises quite a serious point. One, there are people out there that just will not be digital natives, and so how are they protected when we've seen lots of information out there from government about scams, and whether it's been through the taxation offices or from banks, and people who are digital natives may click on the wrong link and then suddenly their business and their accounts are compromised. But there is actually actually great fintech out there now to help in that situation, which should encourage more adoption, and that's through account initiation services providers, which would even allow a trusted third party to look at my bank account for me. They can't touch the contents of the bank account, but they can see my transactions, and on a prevent and detect methodology, they could alert me to unusual transactions that are happening and maybe prevent further ones. And you see a lot of interest from the government. But I think a lot of this comes down again to the government, and the government has a massive role, and it's great that the likes of Google are stepping into this area. But like, the government really needs to move on things like digital identities. And the United Nations has a program to look at digital identities and make sure that these things are in place. And so that once you're digitally identified, then everything else is okay. You can go on, you can do more on utilizing financial services online. That piece of it is really, really important if we want to see the take-up of digitalisation. And others that are not digital natives, they'll need to feel that they can trust the new world they live in. So what is going to be the backstop if something goes wrong? And again, this sort of fits into this whole debate that we have about services going forward should be technology neutral. So that should be encouraging digitalisation. But there will always be a portion of society that may not be comfortable with that. And so we also have to appreciate, one, some people being excluded because they don't have the ability to adopt the technology, but we also have to be mindful of not excluding people that do not want to adopt technology as well.
Good answer. Yeah. Okay, so we started 2020. What was that? 6 months ago now. We started 2020 with a global customer base who wanted one thing. 2020's almost been wiped out. So customer needs they're no longer the same as they were at the beginning of the year. So what are you lot doing about this kind of thing, Anastasija? What do you think about that?
Well. It's probably not the right answer to me as a representative of TWINO, who is like a fully online company from its very initiation. But yes, we've seen some trends in relation to COVID, which I already mentioned. That on one hand, all of these digital services were around. Yeah, so you could join an online training also in the beginning of 2020. You could get online course in the beginning of 2020. You could call a teledoctor in the beginning of 2020, right? But usually you just didn't choose to do so. So I wouldn't really say that there are new needs that arose as a result of COVID, but rather that the segmentation between the customers who are willing to actually go the digital path has changed. Yeah, so more people are ready to go the digital way. And what we saw in our operations, for example, is the switch of the proportion of the way customers are repaying their loans. So if previously, for example, in Russia, approximately 30% of our customers were using offline terminals, so just going to a terminal, depositing the cash and repaying the loans in that way. What we needed to do as the outbreak started is proactively communicate with our customer, especially the one with whom we saw the pattern in the past, that they have different options, that they don't have to leave their house to repay the loan. So we were communicating, sending information about all of these different online paths, and it worked actually good both for the customer, who didn't have to become delinquent, and for us, who were still getting the cash flow from our loan portfolio, even though there were physical restrictions for people to leave their houses.
Okay. Peter, you got a view on that?
Yeah, look, I think the low-hanging fruit, right, in terms of customer needs moving forward is that, and I'm going to put myself in this perspective, what I want to see, and what a lot of clients I know of want to see is the continuation of faster payments. We want to see faster credit-making decisions, and we also want to see more intuitive services So the question is, okay, that's what we want, but how do we get there? And it sort of then takes us into quite a discussion around the utilization of natural processing language, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, right, to streamline a lot of these decisions because of the massive data sets out there. So, I mean, I think customers are fully appreciated and they're very aware of their data protection rights. And this is not a data protection or GDPR discussion, but why I wanted to mention that was that people are aware that companies have all this data on them. And what they don't understand is how come this data can't be shared between the companies with the customer's permission. And that friction is creating a lot of problems. And if we could remove that somehow, and whether it is the AI that does this or machine learning, and it speeds up the journey between point A to point B for a customer, I think we're going to do exceptionally well there, because they are the real enablers of providing the product that are going to satisfy customer needs. So it's as people say, it's not the destination there, Nick, Angie, and Anastasia. It's actually it's the journey.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay.
I would, if I don't mind,
Please, absolutely. Sorry.
Add to Peter's, the need for speed is increasing significantly once we moved online. So I think it's also like for businesses and people, if you can do everything online, you expect that you're going to do that faster as well. So, and those needs that we as business providers or like the service providers need to work on the faster payments, the increase of volumes and more currencies and et cetera, et cetera. But it's also the regulations, like the regulator is like everything to do with the RegTech that needs to change in that way as well, because obviously half of our business is this, the product service, and the half is the regulation of all, the data and everything we provide to the regulator. So that's where I'm really happy to be in Lithuania, where we're moving forward with a lot of like the open data and RegTech, initiatives on that, which makes our life way easier now. I hope it's going to move faster in that way with the COVID situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is COVID changing the game of consumer behaviour? Is it too early to tell what the future of consumerism is? And Agnė, as you just spoke, go again. You go first.
Yeah, so that contributes, the needs for the future consumers is the speed, really. So whether the payments, the Insta payments, like this Insta SEPA payments, or there's more providers, like, more payments with the different currencies through different channels. And that's sort of like the way we're working. And obviously, the easier the product is used and, the less information on the actual product, the better it is. And that's where we move forward as well.
Okay, Peter?
Yeah, look, I again, even though it was that, I'm still surprised by that statistic that 75% of all transactions in Europe still happen in cash. And then you read reports coming out by governments over the last quarter that actually the amount of cash that has been used in transactions has dropped, but it still hasn't had such an impact to change that 75% overall figure. But yeah, look, it has changed consumer behaviour. Absolutely. I mean, shops stopped accepting cash. They did not want to handle cash. Those shops that didn't have merchant acquirers and points of sale devices suddenly had to go out there and get those, because they needed to have it, because there was a government position that keeping our distance was the right thing, and you had the customers sort of saying, well, look, I don't want to touch something that someone else may have touched. I'm taking all these other precautions. I don't want there to be a weak link. So they were demanding contactless payments, but then of course that created quite a stir around the charging of contactless payments and also the interchange fees and all the rest. And I think consumers are becoming a lot clearer and a lot more wise about what the underlying fees are. And as someone once sort of said, is that, look, when we move money from A to B, we're not actually moving any money at all. We're moving a digital representation of that money, right? And so why is the cost to move that money or do that transaction, why does it appear to be so high? Or so it doesn't seem to be proportionate to what we're doing. So I think they're the sort of the questions I think we've empowered consumers as well through the crisis to understand more about their financial position. They understand more about the technology and digitization, and I think they're going to become more demanding. So what we've seen in the last 2 months, I think we haven't seen anything yet that's going to happen in the next 6 months.
Okay. We're kind of coming towards the end, so I want to put this question to you, and feel free to answer how you will. Give me one industry prediction for 2021, considering we probably won't be seeing daylight until 2021. And what does the consumer of 2021 look like? Let's start with Anastasija.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's define industry as processing of payments, so payment terminals, and the consumer as small and medium-sized merchant. So what I believe is going to happen, and what I see already happening around, is that as a result of changing and more open regulation, I believe that in 2021, probably not yet majority, but a big part of new merchants entering the market for accepting payments, they are going to be using their smart devices instead of terminals that they are using at the moment. So it's either going to be mobile phones or iPads, which will have the respective software ready and processing those payments.
Okay. Agnė?
I'm just thinking, I think everything cash related will be...
Do you want to go to Peter first?
No, I would... Will I go?
Peter.
Oh, I start. Okay, so yeah. I agree. I think, look, the consumer is going to want to be able to do things using devices. There's not going to be the handling of cash. So we're going to see the change of their behaviour. But I also think in terms of the small to medium sizes, what's really going to drive their imagination next year is that, look, if I can automate the payments processing piece of my business, and it's really important, I should be learning from that what items I'm selling, right? I should know which things are flying off the shelf faster than others. So how do I connect that information to what's on the shelves, and how do I connect that back to my suppliers so I can automatically replenish the stock that I'm running out of? So, whether we call it disconnected e-commerce and it's driven by the Internet of Things, because we'll be doing things on different devices, whether it's our fridge or watch, is really what's going to drive the next level of experience. But I do think that actually going into next year and the year after, away from just mum and dad consumers and small to medium-sized enterprises, I think you're also going to see a lot of the larger financial companies and large mutual funds starting to work out whether crypto assets are some things they should be holding in their portfolios. So we may even see COVID-19 driving a change in what is considered to be an investment class in a number of years as well.
Okay. Agnė, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I totally agree of the, taking off the cash from the table and just digitalizing more and more. Looking at the product perspective, I would probably add the visualization or the user experience would be probably a key of things. If you use a lot of portfolios, if you invest and you do, all the payments as a consumer and increase loyalty, you want just really to see and understand how, where your money is moving and how it's, your statistics basically. So I think on the product side, talking about that, it's more presenting the data and visualizing a lot of things for the consumer as well.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so we're winding down. Anastasija made a comment to say safe and not going out of your house. So in the last 1 minute, what I'm going to say is this is the first time I've had a shirt and tie on since the start of March. Scotland is still in lockdown, and I feel privileged to be on this call today with three amazing people, and you've given me the opportunity to put shirt and tie back on. So I'm grateful to the three of you. Peter, thank you very much in Ireland, and hope you stay safe and well. Obviously, Anastasija in Riga, the same. Stay safe and well. Thank you very much for your contribution. It was amazing. And again, Agnė in Vilnius, thank you very much. And we've got 1 minute left. Pia, what do you want for Christmas?
I want to discover the next best RegTech solution.
Wow, I thought you were going to say slippers or something, but anyway. Agnė, what about you? What do you want for Christmas?
I would like the world to start moving on air again safely.
Wow, okay. Anastasija, what do you want for Christmas?
Will it be funny if I say a trip to Italy?
Hey, listen, these two want something to work. You can have whatever you want. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, it's been a privilege, and thank you very much for the time that you gave to Fintech Week Lithuania, and I'm sure that everybody's going to enjoy this one. Take it easy, guys.
Thank you. Well done. Well done.
It's been a pleasure, really. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to meeting you all in your relevant countries.
Or in Lithuania.
All the best.
Bye. See you in Vilnius.
Bye-bye. Bye.